have the Fireside chat. We have an Emmy Award-winning journalist, who I will also say more about, Cheryl Jennings. Cheryl, come and join us. So, every time you go to introduce someone like Heidi Kühn, there's, wow, how do you start? Where to begin? But the Azerbaijan delegation that's here helped me with that because they gave me this shovel. And this shovel has a particularly poignancy for Heidi Kühn because on May 11th, when World Food Prize President Terry Branstad announced her name at the US State Department with Secretary Blinken there and Secretary Vilsack there to speak this great moment, she was in Azerbaijan with deminers, and she was setting off landmines there. And the landmine that she blew up, they took the metal from that, melted it down, and made it into this shovel. And this is the symbolism and very meaningful, directly related, of breaking ground, the name of her book, to remove landmines and then plant seeds of new crops and to return the land from mines to vines. Now, say, well, that's an incredible story. And I want to say this afternoon, we have at 5 o'clock, everybody be here. We'll be taking names on this because there will be a demonstration of demining by a group of women deminers. We have a woman deminer from Azerbaijan here, from Vietnam, where I used to serve, and they will be on the stage, not real mines, don't worry, but showing you what they do in order to remove those terrible, terrible items that are a scourge of earth and for innocent people. And in Heidi and I, how am I here introducing her? We met in 2019 when I invited her to come and be part of a panel about post-conflict resolution and returning countries from the terrible acts of war and victims, and restoring peace and building peace through agriculture. It was the title of our symposium, and it's the perfect three-word summation for the 25 years plus that Heidi Kühn has been leading the organization. She is about building peace through agriculture. So after I was retiring, right after that symposium, and she invited my wife, Layson, and I to go to Vietnam with her, where I had served 50 years ago as a brand new diplomat. I didn't get to go to Vienna or Paris as I hoped. I was sent to Vietnam to work in villages and be out in jungles where there were lots of landmines. And there was one sentence that bonded us from the very first conversation we ever had. And she said, I'm involved in removing landmines. And I said, oh, I've worked in landmines as an ambassador and as a diplomat. And said, isn't it sobering that 50 years after the end of the tragic Vietnam War, the last casualty of that war has yet to take place, because somewhere, somehow in Quang Tri province where we went, and we were down in tunnels together, exploring, a landmine is going to take another victim, maim an innocent child, a farmer, take their life, blow off their hands, other incredible things. And I saw Heidi interacting with victims. So she is a person of incredible empathy and is motivated by the victims with which she interacts and with whom she interacts. And she also has this vision of making our planet landmine free. And so we bonded over that, and then we walked the landmines in Quang Tri province together. And on her birthday, said, "Oh, Heidi, what do you want for your birthday?" Said, "I want to detonate a landmine." And so that was arranged, and she allowed me to join with her. She shared her birthday with me, setting off a landmine. And we have been connected ever since. And I'm so proud of her for having been chosen as the World Food Prize laureate. Cheryl Jennings, so I think it was sort of Heidi's bestie, you know. They have been walking those minefields together, and Cheryl has won 9 Emmy Awards, 7 Gracie Awards for promoting women in media, and she has been to, and I'm going to forget, but she's been in Afghanistan, North Korea, South Korea, Vietnam, Kosovo, Qatar. I'm forgetting a couple here, Cheryl, but an incredible, incredible journalist, and who's telling the story of what Heidi Kühn has done. And together, now that she's retired from journalism, they are bonded like sisters in this endeavor. So Heidi, I'm going to hand this shovel to you on behalf of the Azerbaijan delegation that's here, and wanted you to have this special. Not every laureate gets a shovel, and but as a way of beginning your fireside chat.
Ambassador. Thank you. Thank you so, dear Ambassador. Thank you.
So as they say in journalism, you're on.
Thank you, sir. Well, what do you say? Thank you. Thank you to all of you here. And most importantly, thank you to the World Food Prize board, the staff who has been so gracious and welcoming to me from the heart of Iowa, from the heartland of America, during this time in human history. When I received the award in May and it was announced, we didn't imagine we'd be in a world today where planting the roots of peace on earth could never be more important. I'd like to quote at the introduction the words of Dr. Norman Borlaug. "For food is the moral right of all who are born." Yet living in a world today with an estimated 60 million landmines silently poised in 60 countries. And during the past less than 2 years, a country named Ukraine, once the breadbasket of Europe, now has 30% of its land mined by landmines, UXOs, cluster munitions, and unexploded ordnance. So again, I thank you all, global delegates, presidents of countries, ambassadors. The theme of harnessing change from whatever moral perspective and physical contribution you can make to dig up these insidious landmines, to literally turn swords into plowshares, mines into vines, and let us plant the roots of peace on earth. Before we begin, I would just like to extend a very special thank you to my husband, Gary Kühn, my 4 children who are here, Brooks, Tucker, Kylie, Christian, my 7 grandchildren, and from the heart of a mother, we bear the seeds of life, and it is our responsibility as women across the world to turn seeds of hatred into seeds of love. Now, speaking of love, I will turn it now over to truly my sister in spirit, for we have walked the minefields of the world together. In Afghanistan in 2005 with my daughter Kylie, and once again in 2015, a year after a Taliban attack, a 4.5-hour battle that was a defining moment for me as to whether I continued my work or gave up. And we didn't, and Cheryl continued on in Israel, Palestine, Vietnam, And when we were trying to evacuate our team from Kabul, she joined me in Qatar, and we got a family out. One family, many more to go. Cheryl Jennings, it's such an honor to be here with you, and thank you so much for walking the minefields of the world with me.
Heidi, congratulations on this tremendous honor and to be in front of this audience. So thank you for being here. And it's an honor for me to see you being honored. I know how hard it's been for you and your family. Your family, anybody who's in the nonprofit world knows, or in the diplomatic world, your family they have to suffer too, right? If you're doing the work, they're there supporting you. Why are you going to Afghanistan, Mom? Again. But you want to harness change through Roots of Peace by promoting peace through agriculture. And that's the theme of Roots of Peace. But it all had to start somewhere. It had to start with a dream. Somebody had to be that visionary, and that was you. So take me back 26 years ago. What were you doing with your family? And they were little at the time.
Well, it was an extraordinary time in life. I had just survived cancer, and I think cancer is a landmine for anyone who has had it. But I saw this as landmines as a cancer to the earth. And I wanted to take the footsteps of my life as a survivor and do something to leave the planet a little better than when I came in. And I saw Princess Diana. I was holding my little, not even 2-year-old child, my young son, in my arms, and watching this mother, Princess Diana, walk through the minefields in January of 1997 in Angola. And I thought, my oldest sons were about the age of her sons, Wills and Harry, and I thought, what is this mother walking through a minefield? And it stuck to me because I grew up, born and raised in the San Francisco Bay Area, where we have mountains and beaches, and we can run freely, not worry about something as insidious as a landmine. I was driving the children to soccer practice, and just wondering how a child could kick a soccer ball out of bounds and lose a life or a limb to a landmine. So when she took her final footsteps in Bosnia-Herzegovina in August of 1997, and her tragic death, I was asked by the community in San Francisco to host an event. And I didn't quite know what to do. That compassion of this woman who had died and not only catapulted AIDS, but the issue of landmines to the forefront of the international agenda. I hosted an event at our Kühn family home. And from my heart, made a toast. May the world go from mines to vines. And that was the beginning.
And I remember when you told me that story that the room just went so quiet.
Yeah. You could hear a pin drop.
Because they saw your vision, everyone in the room.
It was more than a toast. It was just the image of turning blood to wine, killing fields to vineyards, really literally swords into plowshares. And as a mother of 4 small children, again, by that time, age 2, 10, 12, and 14, I mean, you're asking a mother to do something from the basement of her home. And to be here on the stage to have won the World Food Prize, I believe in miracles.
and so how do you go from a toast in your living room with all your little kids and your husband looking at you going, okay, to walking a minefield in Croatia?
Yeah. Well, it required funding first, Cheryl, and I looked in the kaleidoscope of my backyard, and I looked at the Napa Valley vintners, who are north of San Francisco, and I approached very prominent vintners, knocking just at their door with an idea of turning mines to vines. And they asked me how much money I had, and I said, well, I don't have any. and a beautiful American legendary vintner, Robert Mondavi, and his gracious wife, Margaret, said, well, let's host you a fundraiser. And in one evening, they raised $30,000, which when you're dealing with pennies for peace in the basement, that's a lot of investment in peace. And the State Department came, Ambassador Donald Steinberg, he came and he witnessed the love in that room of not just vintners, but vintners are farmers. They love and they celebrate a harvest of hope. So he matched the funds, and the International Trust Fund matched the funds. And then I went to a beautiful, prominent vintner, Mijenko Grgic, who was born in Croatia, and asked him if he would join me into his homeland of Croatia. At that time, there were 1.2 million landmines, and when he saw that devastation, he came back to his community and engaged over 60 vintners in a major fundraiser. And together we worked hard for 10 years to demine in Bibinje, Čestomale, Čestovelika, Vukovar, Ilak, Katovac, and through that hard work, Cheryl, I think we can all say, I have seen personally with my eyes a country go from 1.2 million landmines to one of the top tourist destinations in the world. So from my perspective, peace is possible if we can hold Croatia up and bring the other 60 countries and counting to heal the wounds of war and to truly plant the roots of peace on earth. It's a business model for peace.
You have a family history of community service that goes way, way, way back in history. People who have affected the course of California, the state of California and America. So tell us about your great, great, late great relative.
Well, I'm a farmer's daughter, and you know, California isn't 150 years ago isn't what it was today. And I had a very intrepid family, came over from Scotland in 1701, settled in Wiscasset, Maine, and helped build the eastern seaboard. And when a young man in the 1830s was born, Captain John A. McNear, he heard there were gold in the hills of California. So he set saddle and set sail, and you know, with very little money, arrived in San Francisco. And he couldn't afford to go to the gold country, so he started the Bank of Sonoma, real estate, shipping industry, to bring the eggs, milk, and butter to feed a growing San Francisco, which, of course, with the fog, couldn't have farms. And he saw then the social injustices that were going on to the Chinese, who helped build the Transcontinental Railroad, put their lives on the line you know, with the dynamite in creating the gold rush. And he offered them to come over to his land. 500 Chinese came, primarily men, and he said, "Do you like women? Send for your wives." And with the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882, he taught lessons that you respect the land and you respect the people, regardless of the color of their hand, the politics in their mind, or the faith in their heart. So that rippled down through generations and really inspired me with those American ethics of peace through agriculture.
You had your international experience as well as a young girl, a teenager, and a deep, abiding commitment with Rotary. So tell us about that. Take us back there.
Well, I think with all the young people here in the audience, you know, there are defining moments, and while the world seems so hopeless right now, we can have those sparks of change. I was very fortunate when I was 17 years old to be selected as the Rotary exchange student from San Rafael, California, to the Rotary Club of Utsunomiya, Japan. And in Japan, it was 30 years before, it was the World War II. They were enemies, and my parents sent me there. And, you know, I saw families who loved and took care of me as a young teenager and taught me lifelong lessons that, you know, forgiveness, and that we can, with our former enemies, make friends. So I came back, told my parents I was going to go to Berkeley, University of California, Berkeley. In the 70s, that was a tough discussion with my dad. It was a lot of a peace movement going on there, but when I went to Berkeley, I met my wonderful husband, Gary Kühn, when we were 19 years old once upon a time, and we studied political economics of industrial societies and learned about the economics of peace, the business of peace. And it set on a journey, and I cannot thank my husband, Gary, for going this journey with me for 46 years and taking that poor man into a minefield. They say marriage is a minefield sometimes, but no, I literally took him there, and you know, he was IBM for 10 years. He was one of the early, with the founders, Adobe Systems. He did Acrobat, A Long Way to Fall, and he really was a business genius in the Silicon Valley, but he really helped me to take Roots of Peace from a vision in the basement of my home where I toiled for 5 years with
a
little
phone
children.
and a fax machine. I bet most of you don't even know what a fax machine is, or a phone on a cord.
On a cord.
Right?
And crying babies in the background. Excuse me, Secretary General, just a moment. Let me cool it down in the back room. But they kept talking to me because I had a dream, and I suppose I was a bit persistent because I just didn't believe any child deserved, or any farmer, to live in a world where there's landmines, quite frankly.
So we saw you and Gary in a minefield with your flak jackets on, and we see another picture. This is in Afghanistan. I went to Afghanistan with you and Gary twice. I heard Gary say last night that he's been to Afghanistan 58 times. That's courage, right?
Yeah.
And to help run the programs that the two of you are working on, and your whole entire family actually has been in minefields. So what does that say?
Yeah.
They're committed.
Yeah, deeply,
Right.
deeply committed.
So let's talk about Afghanistan. That has been the flagship program of Roots of Peace.
Yes, and Cheryl, again, one of the prominent Napa Valley vintners, really was able to be the spark. Diane Disney Miller, daughter of Walt Disney and owner of Silverado, was volunteering in my basement and saw the dedication I had. And after the 9/11 attacks, after we started our program in Croatia, she thought this could be scaled and wrote me a check for $200,000. Now, that's a lot of money when you're in the basement of your home. But through that investment, I was able to partner with the United Nations Mine Action Service, and then partner further on the ground with the Halo Trust. We were able to remove over 100,000 landmines, UXOs, and cluster munitions from the Shamali Plains located north of Afghanistan. And Afghanistan, for many of you may not know, because what we see on TV is, Tora Bora and caves. It's a country 80% dependent upon agriculture for jobs. And conversely, at that time, was one of the most heavily mined countries in the world before Ukraine now has become #1. And, these are fertile grounds for peace, because I think if farmers have the dignity to farm their land without the fear of their children or their livestock stepping on mines, peace happens. You don't want to go shoot somebody when you have a harvest and you have children to feed and you have the dignity and ability to do so.
One of the many aspects of the program was you and Gary worked with the University of California at Davis to bring the latest, most climate-smart, water-smart techniques and technologies to a country that had lost its institutional knowledge of farming.
Yes, and after the mines were out, University of California, Davis, we partnered with this initial $6 million. Now we're scaling up here, and introduced the grape trellis vines. And when we arrived in Afghanistan, the grapes were grown on mounds. Again, for 30 years of war, that connection from grandfather to father to son was lost. And so the grapes were brought up on trellises, and it doubled the yield for the farmers. You prune the vine, you double the yield. They were bringing the grapes harvested at midday on burlap sacks, dragging them to market and hoping for a meager profit. But through the introduction of the trellis grapevines, then we established the cold storage refrigeration and the sorting, the branding of sweet Afghan grapes, and we're able to provide market linkages, which is so important, so that the monies come back to those local communities in all 34 provinces. This program grew with a tremendous generosity and funding of USAID, and then USDA, DOD, European Union, and Asian Development Bank. And if any of you are in this audience, thank you, Tasha Kaur, so much for that investment, because through that we were able throughout the years to plant 7 million fruit trees in Afghanistan. And today, Roots of Peace is still the longest running organization working in Afghanistan. And we were down for one day, and I'm very proud to say we employ over 300 employees today.
After the regime change.
After the regime change, and including 5,000 women that we have trained since February of 2023. Cheryl, these stories don't get into the news. So many negative stories, but these are positive stories from Afghanistan.
The women's program is so important because right now, because of regime change, they can't go walk around.
Yes.
They're behind walls, but you have programs for them so that they can feed their family good nutrition
Yes.
and maybe make a little money.
Yes.
Let's talk about that.
Well, and these are the workarounds. Again, you have to work in any country respecting the rules of the current regime. And Roots of Peace serves no flag. We serve the farmer on the ground all across the world. But currently we're bringing for instance, the kitchen gardens inside of the homes. We're bringing the baby chicks. The chicks lay eggs, that provides the protein for the children, the mines, the nutrition, and then the fathers are able to bring those eggs out and sell them into the market and come back and treat their wives with respect. Because that sense of hopelessness, when you're poor, you're dirt poor and can't feed your children, really that disparity causes anger and truly leads to war. As Norman Borlaug said, you have to have full tummies to bring forth peace.
You really can't do anything if you're hungry.
You can't. And Cheryl, the sophisticated aspect where Roots of Peace with our farmers, they welcomed Roots of Peace. I mean, this is a photo of me having a picnic. They rolled out literally the red carpet for me. I didn't know quite where they were going. They came back with a family red carpet and said, let's have a picnic, Mrs. Kühn. We want to thank you for helping feed our children. And these are stories that do not ever appear in the news. It's always the negativity, but I'm an optimist. I believe in the glass of water, half full and half empty. But we've furthered the grapes and went into the pomegranates in Kandahar, the apples, apricots, almonds in Ghazni, Wardak, Logar, cherries in Badakhshan, in Herat, the saffron, and very tragically this month, 2,000 of our farmers in the midst of harvesting saffron were tragically killed by the earthquake. So this work is not easy, but I'm very proud. Again, in 2014, agricultural exports averaged about 250 million, and again through funding through our USAID CHAMP program, Commercial Horticultural Agricultural Marketing Program, we took those ag exports to $1.4 billion. By bringing the traders to Gulf Food and to Mumbai and to Delhi so that they could do those trade deals.
They'd never been out of Afghanistan.
They never had been number one out of Afghanistan. And the traders, the buyers, the supermarket buyers, Reliance, Big Bazaar, major supermarkets in India with such a demand for the finest fruits from Afghanistan, they weren't going to take the risk to go to Kabul. So we brought the traders to them, and when we found ways to Roots of Peace to build the first ever cold storage refrigeration at Hamid Karzai International Airport, we had an air corridor of these nicely packaged fruits and the supply and demand. I mean, it's the business of peace. It's market driven. This isn't just a peace, Roots of Peace. You have to take it to the ground. You have to remove the landmines first and then plant the high value crops, provide the market linkages, and that comes back to the community. And I think if people ask me how we're working in Afghanistan today, it's a very simple factor. It's the trust in our programs. Trust is everything.
One of the many impressive things that I witnessed was when I was in that first minefield with you, this one little plot of land, and they have mud walls around them, which were all destroyed by war. Mm-hmm. One farmer had 26 landmines in his field. He was behind the deminer, just a few feet. As soon as they got the mines out, the farmer was digging because he had to get the crops in for winter. Mm-hmm. And then I remember your trainers are local. You train the trainers so that it's all locally driven. Mm-hmm. But they were teaching farmers how to prune. They'd never pruned anything.
Yeah. Gary was ordering those pruning shears for, you know, and thousands of them, and we were shipping them. And
But
again,
they cried
yeah,
when they had to prune.
Yeah.
Because they'd never done it before. They thought, this is
Yeah.
terrible. I don't want to give up my vines.
Yeah.
And one of your trainers told us that story. And that pruning, along with the drip irrigation,
Yes, yes.
helped double and triple.
And that's what we're doing, you know, as we speak. We're in the middle of a harvest of hope. You know, Afghanistan, this is harvest season. Nature doesn't wait for peace treaties to be signed or, you know, government negotiations. This is the right moment. And I have many Afghan farmers who are going to be watching live tomorrow when a woman, I think that's respect that the Afghans can see, that respect for women.
They respect you as a mother as well.
As a mother. They've said that straight up, Mrs. Kühn. We don't look at you as a woman. We look at you as a mother who's feeding our children.
And they call you Mama Heidi, which is a very term of endearment. So, but the programs are just so impressive. When I was with you and Gary in Afghanistan in 2015, we met with President Ashraf Ghani, the current president at that time, and he told us that Roots of Peace is a nation changer. You change the gross domestic product of that country. Those are the numbers Gary showed me.
Yeah, by 2%, which is really very incredible. And Afghanistan right now is at a crossroads. Of course, funding is stopped because of you know, decisions by the current regime. But you know, the most vulnerable people, especially the women in these remote provinces, 34 provinces, are poised for starvation. And you know, there are very strict laws right now against not growing poppies, but you can't leave those fields fallow. You have to show, this is an opportunity to show them that high value crops can more than double and triple their yields. And people see that around the various villages, and it's, you know, they adopt those best practices in agribusiness.
A lot of this was started with private funding, then you got government funding. You still need a lot of funding to continue this work in Afghanistan.
Yes, well, and I think the harnessing change, you know, these are examples all over the world. But number one, I want to see a world without landmines. They hold the land hostage for fruitful development, and I want to scale Roots of Peace. I think we have the ability in this room, from the heartland of America, from the soils of Iowa, to take this moment in history where we are watching war on so many fronts, and to show peace through agriculture from the heart of America to the world. This is game time. This is game time. This is a time I've never witnessed in our world, but we have a business model for peace and to take out landmines in every single one of those 60 countries. We have people here from Africa. They know what landmines are. In Angola and Mozambique, we've had conversations.
One of the other many impressive things was that farmers who were not in the Roots of Peace program in Afghanistan saw what was happening with the Roots of Peace farmers.
Yes.
And started embracing.
They adopted it.
The techniques. So it has that potential for spreading throughout the country.
And we shared it online.
If you can just stay there.
We shared it online. Most organizations are competitive. They have their business model and they keep it here. We share so the world can learn and grow together. A sense of abundance rather than a sense of limitation, I think, has been part of the business model for success.
You have another very successful program, privately funded, in Vietnam.
Yes, yes.
And the ambassador was talking about his visit there with you. I had the opportunity with my husband to also travel with you to Vietnam and see the wonderful programs there. The crops are probably some of the best black pepper you've ever tasted in your life. And you also work with taro crops, right? So tell us about the Vietnam program. How did that start? And I believe your son, Tucker, was running that program.
Yes, well, we got funding through the Silicon Valley and a wonderful private anonymous donor. Again, small amounts, $450,000. And our son, Tucker, who had just graduated from USF, came with his resume to his mom and dad and said, I'd like to I'd like to work for you. And again, that was a horrifying moment for a mother. I thought, well, work is dangerous. You know, where have I led my children? You know, absolutely not. And he was quite convincing to his father. And I can say how extremely proud I am of my blue-eyed blonde son, for in my day, in the 1970s, it was a draft card. And he went over there for 3 years and drafted peace in 2009. And this was a very tender time when the public-private partnerships for Vietnam were just opening up, that trust, again, was starting to thaw. And he went into Binh Phuc and to Quang Tri province. Quang Tri is the former DMZ, where some of the worst battles of the Vietnam War were fought. You know, Khe Sanh, Dong Ha, Cam Lo, Hamburger Hill. And today, 80% of that land remains contaminated and riddled by landmines. And in addition to that, since the war ended on April 30th, 1975, again when I was 17 and that Rotary exchange student, over 100,000 innocent footsteps of Vietnamese farmers or children have been maimed or killed by these landmines. Now, it doesn't make headline news, but to be able to not be able to trust the earth that we walk, children not yet even born will lose life or limb to landmines. This is a beautiful photo of one of our farmers, and he was just so joyful and greeted us, and he was harvesting his fruit and presenting it to Gary and I and saying, thank you so much. Come on, because his children wouldn't have to suffer that perils. So we introduced and trained over 10,000 Vietnamese farmers to grow the best black pepper in the world. And again, it's all market driven, right? So furthermore, we provided export markets, and we're selling these beautiful spices where the land was once hot with landmines to Morton and Bassett Spice Company. And just the returns go back to these very rural farmers. And for me, it's especially about the women who have children who are born with Agent Orange still today. They couldn't afford to leave their children and have jobs, but Roots of Peace has given them the dignity to leave their homes, get out of the house, earn the money, hire a babysitter, and be able to provide the food for their families. Because in those situations, when you give birth to a child who's deformed, the husband often leaves, and they're the sole breadwinner. So these are just tragic stories, but there is a solution, and this is dear Morton, a photo coming up of Morton and Bassett Spice Company. You know, this was an example of corporate social responsibility. This dear man, Morton Gotthelf, was a pilot during the Vietnam War, actually bringing those who were injured, the soldiers, back to the United States. It left a very tough memory for him in the 1960s. But this was his way of giving back. And every single bottle of black pepper you go and purchase on a shelf today will have the Roots of Peace logo, the grapevine and dove of peace, behind it. And again, a percentage of proceeds of that black pepper goes to help tens of thousands of farmers today living in Quang Tri province. And I think we have the ambassador Tuan somewhere here who flew out from San Francisco, and peace through agriculture. Vietnam War defined my generation in the 1960s and 70s, but it was about peace and love. And I think, again, we got to bring that down to earth, and there's never been a time in human history that I think those words, peace and love, have never been more important, Cheryl.
When Tucker and Gary were in Vietnam, they applied the same principle there that they did in Afghanistan, where the farmers had to actually buy into the program.
Yes.
They had to make an investment of their own money and take lessons.
And that's the Roots of Peace business model. You know, we don't just give you a tree. You have to be vested in that tree. And all across the world, we make the farmers somehow come up with 50% of the purchase so that they have skin in the game. They're going to water that tree and have the investment. And, you know, oftentimes in these rural villages, like, we have no money, but then they go find it, and then the whole community is vested in that tree and that orchard, and you know, the peace and prosperity is renewed in the country.
And what's so gratifying for so many of them, as you point out, that the kids can go to school.
Yes.
Most importantly, they get good nutrition. But the farmers can have bicycles or motorcycles, such as the one you saw there.
Yeah, and they took me on a ride. You know, he hooked his arms in, he said, get on my motorcycle. Ambassador Kenneth Quinn was there, worried for my life.
Oh, where did that picture pop up?
Yeah, I don't know if we have that one on the motorcycle, but.
No, it was the two of us on set.
Yeah.
So somebody had to tell Heidi's story.
There we are. There's the ride of a lifetime,
Yeah.
you know, and my husband was watching. I don't know, it was a one-way trip he was hoping to take me. I wouldn't come back and drag him to another minefield. But that was just the ride of a lifetime. And this is a farmer who was so joyful and so happy that he had the money from the produce on his tree to afford to buy a motorcycle. And he was so grateful again that his children would not suffer the same. As he was a little boy picking up what he thought was a rock, it blew off his forearms. And we demined and replanted with MAG, the Mines Advisory Group here in this room. We did the demining as a partnership, and Roots of Peace came in and trained the farmers in his entire region. Again, I'll get you all some black pepper. I think it's coming in at my booth later today. Mort is sending over 600 bottles.
Stop at the Roots of Peace
Stop
booth,
at the
for
Roots
sure.
of Peace
Yeah.
booth. It's hot.
And one of the things I learned as I was watching Heidi is that nobody would believe the work that she and Gary were doing in all these countries. It's over there, we don't care, you know, what is that? And so I just made a commitment to try to tell your story.
It wouldn't have happened without you, Cheryl.
Well, but I just wanted people to know that this is happening, that together, no matter who you are, no matter how humble your beginnings are, you can make a difference. And that's what Heidi and her family are doing 26 years, and they're still at it.
Well, you can see on the set, Cheryl, you and I, and Cheryl's very humble. She was #1 news anchor in San Francisco for nearly 30 years, and just an icon of respect and delivering the news. But there's a picture of us with the peace signs, because every time we come back to San Francisco and say, you gotta care, you gotta help us, we have to raise money. And again,
It's a battle.
It's a battle, and people, we don't have landmines, dear, in our country. You know, go pick something else and go try to work on something that help us locally. And I just believe that we are one global village, and the more that we work together to help one another, for every landmine out of the ground, every fruit tree planted provides the fruit of life, the tree of life that will feed future generations of children, nutritious bodies, healthy minds, you know, and able to grow. But not only demine, replant the fruit, but I was speaking to one of our esteemed laureates who focuses on climate change. It's the planting of each and every tree which provides the carbon sequestration that is going to heal the lungs of Mother Earth and help us as a business model to restore the balance of nature so that we don't have this drastic climate change that is not, you know, it's irrefutable. But each tree planted is going to help provide the carbon that will restore the lungs of Mother Nature. So.
Well, you've done all of this, you and Gary and your family, but you haven't stopped. You have more countries to talk about. So
Sadly.
I want to get, before we run out of time, I want to get to Guatemala.
Okay.
We've been very concerned, and everybody is concerned about migration and the causes of migration, and why do people feel compelled to leave their homeland?
Well, Roots of Peace has chosen to focus on the root cause of outmigration. So again, this is a post-conflict study, area Guatemala. You know, we don't have to literally have the landmines there. We go into post-conflict countries because Guatemala, Nicaragua, El Salvador, you know, this is a tremendous problem in the United States for those of you from various countries of people coming to our borders by the thousands seeking jobs. Well, that is because we are trying to get to the root cause of outmigration, as it's referred to. The average farmer makes $7 a day, and they make $20 an hour in the United States. The land is fertile, And we are going to the farmers and training them, again, in agroforestry and the shade cropping, not only the coffee, but if you complement that with macadamia trees and avocado trees, they're going to have a dual crop. And what happens there is they're now tripling their income. So the eldest in the family is not asked to leave and take this dangerous trek. We want you to stay and be our strong farmer. And this is getting adopted all throughout Guatemala in the the Western Highlands, which is referred to today as San Marcos, Huehuetenango, and Quiche. But that is the highest concentration of migration to the US borders. So again, I'm flagging Tucker because he lives there with his beautiful wife Cassandra and our 2 grandchildren, because he's committed to those farmers. And the pilot demonstration plots of 70 pilot plots have now directly affected over 450 farmers. And the government, the Ministry of Agriculture, is now working with them, because this is a model. It can be scaled, but it needs the financial investment.
This one was privately funded.
Privately funded.
Again,
and the Rotary Club of Palo Alto gave me $5,000. I mean, these are little tiny droplets, but it's proof of concept that with the investment of corporations, of individuals, of foundations, we can scale this and roll it out across the world. It's all about the farmer. The answer is in the soil. It's the seeds. I had the honor of visiting the Seed Center, Science Seed Center at Iowa State University this week, and it's just amazing to imagine these incredible seeds in the heartland of America. I'm a Californian, but I really love Iowa now. I feel like I'm on a second citizenship here. These are just beautiful people and committed to the seeds of life. So what a beautiful place for peace to come from, and particularly this week to show the world that peace is possible through agriculture.
In Guatemala, you're also working with water-wise and climate issues. So teaching them how to use drip irrigation so they can get, 3 crops instead of 1 crop.
Right.
So it's the proof of concept you're talking about.
Yes.
It's there for anybody who wants to join Roots of Peace in this.
Yeah.
All right, we're getting close to our time, so I want to get to Angola.
Yes.
Yet another country.
Well, many of you from Africa, and you know that the continent of Africa is considered one of the most heavily mined continents in the world. And we went to Angola to walk the fields where Princess Diana once walked in Huambo. And again, this is a country 80% dependent upon agriculture for jobs. And yet, when you are in the capital of Luanda, looking outside of your high-rise hotel, you see the ships coming in from South Africa to feed a country that's capable of feeding itself. Again, the preamble for peace is getting out these insidious landmines so that we can train the farmer to grow these beautiful high-value crops. And again, with our partnership with MAG, the Mines Advisory Group, we're deeply committed to this country because this is a solution for Africa. Again, the beautiful tiny baby strawberries in Huambo, the bananas, the pineapples. I mean, these are beautiful, lush, ripe fruits, and it's a country once demined that can feed not only itself but sub-Sahara Africa. So we've got to get down to the business of peace, Cheryl. I am adamant throughout my life peace is possible. Call me a Berkeley girl, but I believe in the power of peace and love, and that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
One of the things that Heidi and Kylie and I did was we were trying to raise awareness through the eyes of children. And so we founded something called the Roots of Peace Children's Penny Campaign. Mm-hmm. And it was so successful because the children led the drive. Kids can get kids to listen when adults won't listen. And Kylie's program was so successful.
Well, I took my daughter to a minefield when she was 13 years old, so that's where it began. But Cheryl, she went back with both of us on her 18th birthday, and she was so inspired to see what children suffered around the world. She started with with us a penny campaign, penny by penny, to raise the funds to build schools for girls in Afghanistan. And as a mother, I can't say how proud I am, again, of all my children's contributions. They didn't have to do this, but she raised 50 million American pennies to build schools for girls in Afghanistan.
And some of those were used in Angola.
They were enjoyed, yes, yeah, to Kylie. Yeah, to Kylie. And she'll be here tomorrow on the stage with my little granddaughter, 4 months old, little Adeline. But, you know, it just shows you, the young people in the audience, you know, you may be frozen for what you're seeing going on in the news, but penny by penny, drip, 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 ocean, you know, we can do something together, and that would be my biggest dream, and not only receiving this distinguished award and putting it on a shelf, but leaving something sustainable behind, an initiative that, you know, we will back you. You think it up, the youth, and, you know, maybe, you know, like an ice bucket campaign, right? Establishing little gardens all over the world, asking the world to plant peace, so we see peace coming from the bottom up, not waiting for it to come from bombs from the top down. It could be an incredible campaign. And,
are you inviting them to be part of the Roots of Peace Corps?
Yes, the Roots of Peace Corps. With Peace Corps, we got to move beyond, but Ambassador Quinn coined that phrase with me, the Roots of Peace Corps. So available to talk to any of the youth all day on Friday. So.
All right, before we leave, we got to talk about Ukraine just for a moment. You've been invited to help with the demining problem there.
Yes, yes, and today, right here, we're going to announce a partnership with MAG, the Mines Advisory Group, with Tetra Tech, which is a US-based demining organization funded by the US Department of State, PMWRA, Political Military Affairs and Weapons Removal and Abatement, and Rotary Ukraine in Mykolaiv, in the southern area near Odessa. There are tremendous, not only the landmines, the bombs that permeated the earth, but the bottling facilities have been destroyed. So we're working on a partnership with these wonderful deminers, and most importantly, the Ukrainian Wine Association, because this is a country that, you know, has provided the most beautiful wines. And from mines to vines, again, to be very clear, the fruit of the vine may be fermented in a fine bottle of wine, but in the case of Afghanistan, it's only fresh grapes and raisins. So we're very sensitive to the culture of the country we're working. But this is a very, very special bottle that was sent to me by the farmers in Mykolaiv. And it is the Roots Peace Cabernet Sauvignon, harvested from the former minefields of Ukraine. And it reads on the back, in tribute to the inaugural Roots of Peace Mines to Vines program, in collaboration with Rotary Ukraine, together we seek to eradicate landmines from the Mykolaiv regions where grapes have flourished for thousands of years. May we transform minefields into thriving vineyards as we plant the roots of peace in Ukraine.
So the graphic that you're seeing on the screen right now is something that you will not want to miss coming up at 5 o'clock today. It's a panel which includes Heidi's husband, Gary Kühn, Jamie Franklin from Mines Advisory Group, and 3 women from Vietnam came all this way to show you what they do as deminers. And I hope that Jamie and the deminers are in the room, because we would love for you to stand and let us see you and acknowledge you, if that's possible. If you're here, shout it out, Jamie. There you are. Yes. All right. And our demining ladies, thank you. Thank you so much for being here. Come on.
Yeah.
So this is going to be at 5 o'clock this afternoon. But before we go, we have just a minute left. Heidi, I know you have some final thoughts.
Well, I just want to extend my gratitude again. The stories that we're sharing are true stories. With the earthquake earlier this week, Last month, I received a call from the women in Afghanistan, and they extended their gratitude. I was wondering, why are you thanking me when you have suffered this devastating earthquake? They said, well, Mrs. Kühn, you gave me a job. My husband had come home, and we have 5 children to feed. He said, we cannot feed them all. We must sell our youngest daughter, who's 10. She found Roots of Peace. She got a job inside the home making the cucumbers into pickles and got all her friends to come. It became highly successful, and she thanked me that her daughter did not have to be sold because she had a job with Roots of Peace. So I'd like...
That's the power of the Roots of Peace family. Heidi, thank you. Congratulations.
Thank you. And I'd just like to thank again the D-miners here, not only from MAG, Tetra Tech, but from Manama. I hope you have a chance to see them. And I just, Cheryl, would like to hold this shovel up in my battle cry for peace and the words that are respected by various faiths in Old Testament. May they beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks, so that nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war anymore. Thank you.
Heidi Kühn.